4 words. They've been repeated at rallies, painted on signs, and brought thousands of protesters' hands into the air ever since the August killing of unarmed teen Michael Brown at the hands of Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson, when eyewitnesses initially said this.
He puts his hands up like this, and the cop continued to fire.
Put his hands into the air, being compliant, and he still got shot down like a dog.
Those 4 words, along with the Black Lives Matter movement, traveling across the country, not only via rallies, but also through the news media and pop culture. The St. Louis Rams causing an uproar among police after several players take the field with their hands in the air. And it has had staying power. Even months after the grand jury decision, Pharrell turns his hit Happy into a dark performance, incorporating the tagline at February's Grammys.
Hands up.
The words echo through Congress, too. Some assuming it is true that Brown actually had his hands up. For others, it is a symbol.
We want you to know that our hearts are out there marching with them.
Here at CNN, a panel of commentators moved by the protests put their own hands up after the grand jury decision. Some people celebrated it, but others were outraged by the continued use of the phrase.
The St. Louis Rams think it's cool for them to suggest that St. Louis cops shoot young black men who have their hands up in the air when we know that that was a lie? It's a lie.
Washington Post writer Jonathan Capehart concluding this week that hands up don't shoot is, quote, built on a lie. In fact, a Department of Justice report concluded that evidence contradicts eyewitness claims that Brown had his hands up.
Black Lives Matter.
Now, as protesters call for justice, some are phrasing it differently. Black Lives Matter.
Because all lives have value.
Really? How so? Why does white life have value?
Well, I think my
for
life
who?
has
White?
value.
No, excuse me. For who? Our argument is that white life is wrong.
Why?
Our argument is that we should never affirm white life. That your argument of just affirming all life in general is not good, especially not good for black people when white life itself is based off of black
why shouldn't we affirm
civilization.
my life?
You're probably white.
I am white. Why shouldn't we affirm my life?
I don't understand why I have to care about your life anyways. There's no ethical reason as to why white people deserve to live. Affirming black life means that white death has to occur. That's why you should lose this debate and why your life ain't worth affirming.
Can I kill myself, like, under your arguments?
Sure.
Okay. So, should Odie kill himself?
I don't see why not.
Why should we do that? How does that help?
It's ethical.
How is it ethical? We all have some form or another of privilege. Why does that mean we should kill ourselves?
Because you have white privilege.
Why does having white privilege necessarily mean I should kill myself? Why shouldn't I, like, struggle against the structures?
Sure, struggling against the structure means putting yourself on the line, putting your body on the line. Do it. Affirm your suicide. That's cool.
That's very good.
I mean, it's, you know, it's one little form, it's one little step.
A caught-on-tape moment that caused national controversy. Latasha Ned was arrested back in September after videos emerged of her declaring, quote, open season on crackers, and suggesting people start walking up on untrained police officers and stealing their weapons. She says the videos were selectively edited and never meant for public consumption. Here's a clip.
They've been coming for our throats. They've been coming for our lives. They're killing our women, saying that they committed suicide. They're killing our unarmed men for no reason at all, for petty crimes or nothing at all, for traffic stops. Your tail light out and you getting killed.
Latasha and her attorney are with us in a moment, but first, Trace Gallagher has more on her arrest. Trace?
Megan, a county judge ruled that when Natasha Led was seen brandishing a gun and a machete and saying it's open season on killing cracker cops, it was enough to move criminal charges against her to a superior court. But now Ned and her attorney say she wasn't threatening cops or white people. She was threatening a group that hacked into a chat session she was having on Google. She claims the very same group stole her videos, edited them, and posted them out of context on the internet. Listen.
I maintain that I have the right to defend myself from these hate-filled rants from this group and their supporters. At no point did I ever want to kill or hurt law enforcement officers, and the unedited version of these videos will prove that fact.
Except she and her lawyer never do explain how the statements "kill crackers," "take a gun from a cop day," and "take over police stations" were taken out of context. Latasha Ned, you'll remember, is part of the F-Yo flag movement, an offshoot of Black Lives Matters. And though she now claims that she never threatened white people, while she was being led into the police car and asked, "Did you threaten to kill white people?" she reportedly responded, quote, "Well, they killing us." Watch.
All I did was say defend yourself against people that want to kill us. That's all. I never said anything more than that. I never said anything more than that. So I'm being arrested.
These white motherfuckers out here, y'all know who Mike Brett. Fuck y'all. Hey, what y'all need? What they need? What be your chair? What they be your chair? What they be your chair? What they be your chair? Don't worry about it, bitch. Shut the fuck up. I don't give a fuck about none of that. I don't give a fuck about none of that.
She's one of the organizers of the Black Lives Matter movement.
What? No racist police.
And yesterday, Yusra Kogali helped lead a march on Queen's Park decrying racism. In February, however, Kogali posted what could be interpreted as a hate message of her own on social media. News Talk 1010 found this tweet. "Please, Allah, give me strength not to cuss, kill these men and white folks out here today. Please, please, please." The tweet was removed, her account locked down, and no one from Black Lives Matter has responded to our request to speak today. Yesterday, Kogali got her chance to talk to the Premier.
I'm Kathleen, and you're?
I'm Janaea Khan.
Janaea, hi, how are you? And you're?
Yusra.
Hi, Yusra. Nice to meet you. Hi.
A conversation where she and the Premier discuss anti-black racism.
The reason we're setting up an anti-racism directorate is that I believe that we still have systemic racism in our society.
Anti-black racism.
And
anti-black
yes,
racism.
And
Thank you for
beyond.
saying it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
While the meeting was seen as a victory by protesters, this conversation has landed the Premier in hot water with the police union.
Within the context of what was going on there, it's reasonable for us and anybody else to draw the conclusion she is talking about policing, and I'm very troubled about that.
Kathleen Wynne did not speak to reporters about this today. Instead, Michael Couteau, who's the minister responsible for anti-racism, spoke up.
What the Premier said is that systemic racism exists in Ontario. She didn't point to any particular group. We know that systemic racism is here in Ontario. That's why we set up the Anti-Racism Directorate.
As for Yusra Kogali, silence. And police say they are not investigating the online comment since no one has formally complained.
Chaos erupting at St. Louis City Hall, and it all happened in front of News 4 cameras.
A pushing and shoving match, and at the center of it is the president of the Police Officers Association. Jasmine Huda was in the room during all of it. Jasmine, what happened?
Sharon and Steve, this was a public meeting about a civilian review board, and it ended with a melee. There was a heated exchange of words, and as you're about to see, things quickly got out of control.
You do not tell me my function in this building. Oh, no. Oh.
And that went on for several minutes. Here is what witnesses are saying happened. A woman says she was getting up to leave when she says she was pushed aside by Jeff Rorta, that's the head of the Police Officers Association, as he was addressing the committee chair, Alderman Terry Kennedy.
I mean, I was literally just trying to leave the meeting, and I got caught in whatever Rorta and Kennedy had going on.
Their exchange.
Yeah, I got caught in their exchange. So Rorta just jumped out into the aisle, pushed me over, tried to get to Kennedy. I'm like, wait a minute, don't push me. So he just started going off on me, pushing me.
And that's when things got out of control, people pushing and shoving for several minutes. The meeting was adjourned for the evening. Now, that is her account. There is another side to this story. My colleague, Matt Stesny, spoke with Jeff Rorta for his take on what happened this evening. Matt.
Yeah, that's right, Jasmine. Jeff Rorta spoke to me just over an hour ago here at his office at the Police Officers Association. He told me that he thought that this hearing tonight at City Hall was what he called a sham hearing that lacked any kind of order. He was also there tonight wearing a bracelet that said, "I am Darren Wilson." Now, this is what Rorter told me from his perspective as to what happened in the moments leading up to when things got out of control.
You know, as I tried to exit, she continued to do that. 2 or 3 other anti-police radicals rushed over, and things de-escalated, or escalated from there.
You didn't push a woman, though?
No.
At Dartmouth College, the display torn apart and replaced with Black Lives Matters signs. Now, it all began when Dartmouth College Republicans put up the school-approved display during National Police Week, but just hours after it went up, Black Lives Matters activists took matters into their own hands. President of the Dartmouth College Republicans, Michelle Nesbaugh, goes on the record. Nice to see you.
Hi, nice to be on. Thank you for having me.
So on Friday, you had this display up honoring the police. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what happened?
So the night before Thursday evening at around 11 p.m., we put up our display with some statistics about police officers who have been victims of violence before. We had statistics about September 11th. Every 61 hours, a police officer is murdered in the United States on general. And the next morning, we got up and we saw that our display was torn apart and replaced with Black Lives Matter posters. Later that day, we went through, we talked to the administration, and there was a lot of mixed signals. Around 5 p.m., we were told that we were not allowed to replace our display because throughout the entirety of the day, 25 Black Lives Matter protesters were standing in front of the billboards. Not only did they replace our billboard with their display, they also replaced all of the other billboards in the Student Center with Black Lives Matter posters and posted pictures of our club members' faces with Sons of Old Dartmouth written over it.
They got violent, smashing windows of stores and cars.
Do you see this nappy ass hair on my head? That means I'm one of those more militant Negroes. And you know what I'm here for? Because these redneck motherfuckers murdered Sandra Bland because she had nappy hair like me.
I have no doubt. Good luck to you.
Yeah, good luck.
We're not the enemy.
So do you agree with Malcolm X that white people should be killed? Is that why you're here?
You damn right I do.
You do?
You think I'm scared to say that to you?
You think white people should be killed,
You motherfuckers
huh?
thought we should be killed when y'all came and stole us from Africa and put us in chains and murdered us for over 400 years. So yeah, you do need to die. I think everybody else on the planet will have peace when you're dead.
Are you responsible for what your parents did?
Listen, I'm talking for me. I answered your question.
All right.
Now I'm done talking because I don't negotiate with fucking terrorists. I think you should go back to those caves that you crawled out of in the Caucasus Mountains because you can't leave black and brown people alone. We can't have any peace on the planet because of white supremacy and white existence. So yeah, fucking die or go back to the caves. Not scared to say it.
There's a lot of white people in the crowd. And that wasn't a joke. I wish this many people came out to our racial demonstrations and our Black Lives Matter movements.
Come on. How are you?
Well, I don't want to stand up here and be angry because this isn't for me and this isn't for you. It's for the people that we lost and the people we may lose tomorrow and the people we lost yesterday. But I thought I'd take the moment to just list out some facts that many of you probably don't know because you're white. I'm tired of the black and white dichotomy that happens every time we talk about race or anything that goes on in our country. But we never take the time to consider the shades in between, like mine. And as much as it it's awesome that there's so many people here today, but it's like, who are you really here for? So
Whoa. Hey, no.
I'm offended by the language of uprising applied to people who are breaking into other black people's stores and looting them. This is a lack of values. And people who are destroying private property, destroying cop cars, in an uprising against what exactly? Against the black police chief, against a mostly minority police force, against the black mayor, against the black president, against the black attorney general, against against a city council that is 9 of 15 are black and all 15 are elected Democrats. What is the uprising against? What is it seeking to achieve? I still don't see what exactly the riots are seeking to achieve. Bottom line is, this is all, it all could be boiled down to just act like a mensch. Act like a human being. Honestly, it's not useful to riot, it's not useful to break things, it's not useful to throw rocks at people. And the idea that we're supposed to sort of correlate your level of outrage.
I'm going to stick to the 30 seconds on this.
Yeah, the last sentence. The last sentence.
Yeah.
The idea that we're supposed to correlate your level of outrage with a certain level of justification. In other words, the more outraged you are and the more angry you are, the more justified you must be, is absolute nonsense.
But as a black man, I do understand that Black Lives Matter. You know, I stand for that. I believe in that wholeheartedly. But I also think that there's a way to go about things, and there's a way to do things. And I think the issue at hand needs to be addressed internally and before we move on, because from personal experience, you know, you have living in the hood, living in the inner city, you deal with things, you know, you deal with people dying, dealt with a best friend getting killed, and it was two 35-year-old black men. You know, and wasn't no police officer involved, wasn't anybody else involved, and I didn't hear anybody shouting Black Lives Matter then. And I think that's the point we need to get to, is that we need to deal with our own internal issues before we move forward and start pointing fingers and start attacking other people. We need to solidify ourselves as a people and deal with our issues, because I think as long as we have black on black crime and black, you know, one black man killing another, you know, if Black Lives Matter, then they should matter all the time.
Vehicles and other durables, the median black family worth is just $1,700, while 40% of black families have zero or negative wealth. White family worth, in terms of financial worth, is 69 times more than that of black families. Given this disparity, how can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, you know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.